O Terranigma, how shall I compare thee? No, really, this is a serious question. I've tried doing this review over and over and over again, and I'm just still not satisfied with the words that come out of my mouth. What magic words can I conjure that will move you to action? You see, I love Terranigma. And it's not just that I should love Terranigma, but that you should love Terranigma too. Or at least give it a shot. You see, games by Quintet, well, they're special. They're a rare breed. Whereas most games that come close to perfection, oftentimes the slightest imperfections stand out because everything else was just that good. But Quintet games, well, they charm you, or at least they charm me, into loving their games despite their flaws. That is, if you're even able to notice them in the first place. I mean, I know these games have flaws. It's my job to notice them, but would I have noticed them if I was just playing these games casually? When a game's polish is just so fine and beautiful that it actually might distract you from the game's flaws? And nowhere is this quality more evident than in Quintet's third entry in the Soul Blazer series. Terranigma is the culmination of the combined efforts of the Quintet team on the Super Nintendo. Let that sink in for a moment. Quintet, developer of Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, ActRaiser 1 and 2, everything led up to the creation of what I consider to be their magnum opus. Tomoyoshi Miyazaki returns as the writer, designer, and director and poured his soul into the steel of this game. Terranigma is an action RPG that heavily emphasizes puzzle solving, precise platforming, and fast-paced combat. Quintet ditches the leveling system from Illusion of Gaia for a more traditional experience points leveling system. Because of this, enemies are now able to respawn, which helps maintain the game's difficulty from start to finish. Also, in breaking with Illusion of Gaia, Quintet made the decision to drop the idea of multiple playable characters in exchange for more frames of animation for Ark, the game's protagonist. And this really pays off since you're able to see how fluid the animation is. Ark is well animated whether he's fighting, walking, running, jumping, swimming, climbing, falling, whatever. But that's not to imply that Terranigma breaks many traditions with its predecessors. I mean, the idea of resurrecting the world played more of a backseat role in Illusion of Gaia, but in Terranigma it's been placed front and center, much like Soul Blazer. Each dungeon has a different theme, and beating that dungeon will have an immediate, noticeable effect on the world of Terranigma, because in Terranigma you're literally resurrecting the world. In Terranigma, you play as Ark, who is an energetic teenager who at first comes off as maybe a bit of a troublemaker, but a good-natured troublemaker. He can't be all that bad because he seems to have garnered the attention of the local pink-haired beauty. You could say that life was pretty swell up until Ark unwittingly opened Pandora's box, freezing his entire village in time. That is, except for a mysterious old man who calls our hero into action. In order to reverse the damage you've done, you must revive the world above. And I'll just leave that little bit of plot with you because it only gets weirder and crazier from there. But it's not just a weird and crazy game, this is also an emotional roller coaster. Terranigma, despite its often goofy nature, manages to be a very somber game at points. The contrast, I think, is what really makes those touching moments so stark in my mind. If you're the kind of person who often puts yourself into the shoes of the character you're playing, this game will make you squirm. Terranigma deals with the themes of life, death and resurrection, destruction and rebuilding, betrayal and forging new friendships. About defying fate to choose your own destiny. Does that sound a little lofty for a Super Nintendo game? Some of these themes are pretty obvious and others are really subtle, but each one was handled very well. And that's not all that was handled really well. Earlier I touched on the fast-paced combat within Terranigma, but that sort of thing wouldn't have been possible if the controls weren't so responsive. Controlling Arc is a very intuitive experience. While playing the game, you find your own style of play that best suits your preferences, because that's just how adaptable his moveset is. In a move similar to Illusion of Gaia, levels were designed with progressively more complex layouts which required the collection of new skills or items in order to get past new obstacles or defeat new enemies. Arc now has a wide arsenal of rods and spears at his disposal, as well as an armory full of capes and armors with different stats and other bonus effects. Also making a return from Soul Blazer is the use of magic, which sadly was omitted from Illusion of Gaia, but to be completely honest, it could have just as easily have been omitted from Terranigma for all the good that it does. The magic system was implemented through the use of one-off rings and pins, which can only be purchased using gold as well as an uncommon, non-regenerating item, Magirock. A notable improvement over Soul Blazer and Illusion of Gaia is that no longer does it feel like the story exists solely to move you along to the next dungeon. There's a vast world out there, and there's plenty of towns to travel between, and they're all fully fleshed out. People in towns have their own little stories that you can follow as you progress through the game and help build the towns. It really makes you feel like you are a powered player in a living, breathing world. And again, this is on a Super Nintendo game. And unless you've been listening to this review with your eyes shut, you can already see how wonderful the sprites in this game are. Every enemy is beautifully animated, and the environments are crafted with great attention to detail. I mean, just look at this. Look at this. It looks like someone took Chrono Trigger and turned it into an action RPG. And honestly, I don't think there's a better compliment that I could give to a game, but not for lack of trying. The sound design behind Terranigma also blows me away. The music is also a step up from Illusion of Gaia, and the sound effects are still that great, awesome, chunky, satisfying sound you can only get out of a Super Nintendo sound chip. The music is so memorable and crafted so well for each area. There are some songs that even today still have the power to draw emotion out of me weeks after having completed the game. I don't know if it's because of the strong association with certain parts of the game, or if it's just because the songs are innately crafted to draw emotion. Why not both? But perhaps the greatest tragedy is that Terranigma never made it to the United States, and it probably never will. But I really, really hope that I'm wrong. Because it never came out here, it's hard to get an exact bearing on how much a copy ought to cost you for an original copy, since English versions were sold in both the UK and Australia, but prices between the two locations can vary greatly. But I've seen loose copies sell for well over $100, and getting a PAL copy of the game to run on American hardware is another costly endeavor altogether. For this reason, I've decided to go the route of a reproduction cartridge once again. This copy came from Time Walk Games, and because of that, costs a pretty penny. However, they're no longer making reproductions, so you'll most likely have to spend around $60 on a cart-only reproduction. In case I haven't made this abundantly clear throughout the course of this review, I adore Terranigma. If you only play one game that I've reviewed in the last year, make it Terranigma. Buy a copy, download a copy, I don't care. Play a copy. Experience this game in all of its glory. I don't mean to oversell this game, and honestly, I'm not sure that I could. I mean, Soul Blazer is a pretty good game, and Illusion of Gaia is amazing, and you should definitely play it, but Terranigma is my favorite game on my favorite console, and that's why it's got a spot in the game collection.